In the kitchen now with Lindsay Brooks from Runaway Spoon. She has a wonderful catering company, does wedding cakes and desserts, and will cater any kind of party you want. Always great to see you.
You too, Amy. Thank you so much.
Fondue. I love fondue, especially in the winter. It's kind of a great way to beat the winter blues.
It is, and it's something fun, and it, you know, if you have a couple of friends over, your neighbor over, or something like that, it's just a nice time.
This is a fun one. A 4-cheese pesto fondue.
Yeah, so something a little different than the traditional fondue, and it's got different cheeses in it as well. So if you don't like Swiss cheese, which is typically in a traditional fondue, this one's going to give you some provolone and fontina, a little bit lighter cheeses.
So we heated some dry white wine in a saucepan, and what next?
Okay, so as far as the heat goes, you want to turn it on low now. So once you bring that wine up to a simmer, you're going to leave it at that. If it gets too hot, it might break your cheeses. So you just want it nice and warm. We've got about 1.5 cups of fontina, 1.5 cups of provolone, and 1/2 cup of Romano cheese, and 3 tablespoons of flour. Throw that all into the big bowl and toss it all together so that the cheese is coated with the flour.
Okay, and that's key because we've all seen that fondue or cheese sauce that kind of breaks.
Yep.
And
the flour is going to kind of help that, and then also that the wine that's warm but not necessarily boiling will also help that. You want it to melt the cheese but not actually boil the cheese.
Now I always kind of add it a handful at a time.
Yep, and then feel free to whisk it. Add a handful, whisk a little, add a handful, whisk a little.
All right, I'll work on that. You want to work on the pesto?
So now we're going to make pesto, and you could use a jarred pesto, but the thing with a jarred pesto is there's typically olive oil in it, and the olive oil can make a difference to add more oils that you're adding to your wine mixture.
Okay.
So we're going to make it from scratch, and it's just going to start out with a good handful or so of basil leaves. The basil leaves can look a little sad, or if they look a little wilted, that's perfect for this.
Okay.
We're just going to throw them in the food processor. And we've got a couple tablespoons of toasted pine nuts going to go in there, and a whole clove of garlic is going to go in there. And then I've got 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. So we'll add that into our pesto right off the bat here. Put it in the food processor, give it a couple turns, break it up a little bit. And then once it's kind of processed up, we're going to add a little bit of wine to it. Instead of oil at this stage when you normally make pesto, we're actually going to add wine to it.
Okay.
So while it's running, just kind of go ahead and pour in about 1/4 cup or so of wine.
I'm cutting up some wonderful French or Italian, just a real crusty bread for dipping and dunking.
Yeah, this is a great one for bread as far as the flavors go. You could use some raw vegetables in here too, but for me, I love bread, cheese, pesto, all that mixed together.
And you can cut them into cubes or just slices, whatever it is.
It really depends on your company. Yeah, I like bigger pieces, so then I can go straight in there with the pot rather than using an actual fork.
Kind of with you on that one. You always lose the fork.
I don't, and the things come off of it, I just don't care for it.
Exactly.
So once you've got your fondue made in the on the range, then we're going to go ahead and pour it into our preheated actual fondue pot. This is electric. If you had the regular one, the old school ones that had a candle underneath, you just want light the candle before you put the cheese in because you don't want the cheese to cool down too much.
Wow, it looks amazing. It smells really great. Now, what do we do with that pesto?
Now the pesto we're going to swirl in on the top. You could definitely mix it in. But I like to kind of give it a little color, a little swirl on top. So the straight pesto, uncooked, go ahead and put it on there.
Wow.
And then
does that look good?
Kind of just mix it in a little bit.
What a fun way to entertain too, because you don't really have to do a lot of cooking. Just set it all out there and let people help themselves.
Yep.
Not real expensive. Oh, does that look beautiful?